So let's talk about your characters. Your characters are what are going to drive your book. They're in our genre, the most important things. You need to make them feel alive. You need to make them breathe. You need to make them just realistic. So let's talk about ways to do that. First thing that we'll start to talk about is the concept of a sympathetic character. Sympathetic characters. This is kind of the word that a lot of us use because sympathetic is better than saying protagonists and antagonists or heroes and villains, because you want generally almost all of your characters to be sympathetic for one reason or another. Okay? Even your villains, the villains that you love, are sympathetic for some odd reason. And we'll talk about that. Let me throw it at you guys first that have not taken the class before, since the rest of you know answers to this, hopefully, if you don't. What makes a character sympathetic to you? What makes you like a character when you're reading one in the book?
Some similarity between you and the character.
Okay. You hit one of the big three right off the bat.
Yeah, problems.
Okay, problems. Problems are good. Another way to put this is the underdog syndrome. We like underdogs, don't we? It's just human nature. Okay, what else?
Consistency.
Okay.
I mean, they can evolve, but not doing just random things.
Okay, I like that. That's not one I usually put up there, but that's a very good point. Characters should act like themselves. And you can't get to know someone if they're not consistent. In fact, characters in books actually tend to be far more consistent than people are in real life. This is a case of truth is stranger than fiction. In the book, you're going to have to give foreshadowing and reasoning for why a character is acting a way if they're acting erratic, which they can do, that in real life, you may never not give. You just may be a moody person, and you're jumping all over the place. In the book, you're going to have to establish this is a moody person, that, and this sort of thing. All right, what else?
I'd say they have kind of depth in their interests and what they think about.
Depth. That's a good one. What else?
Something you aspire to be.
Okay, that's one of the other big three that I usually point out. In a lot of ways, I view characters like this. It's almost like there's a bit of continuum between what we call the everyman and the Superman or woman. The idea being that these two things are kind of core concepts that make up what attaches us to a character. Either we see what we are in them, or we see what we want to be in them. And a lot of times you will have books that this is the growth archetype of the character. Can you think of one of these?
Star Wars.
Star Wars! That's a great one. What else?
Randolph.
Okay, Rand. Or basically anyone on the hero's journey. I honestly don't think Frodo counts. I think Frodo stays as Neverman, and that's perfectly plausible. I mean, Frodo stays as Neverman, Aragorn stays as Superman. In the movie, they move Aragorn from here to here, but in the books, he basically starts here and stays there. And it's fine to do that. But these 10, any three of these archetypes can work. I like to put up Spider-Man here. Because he basically fits the perfect archetype of the everyman who becomes Superman, right? And that's why his story is so compelling. That's why it works. But there are plenty of stories that work with the Superman straight off. And we're talking, in this we talk about power level, which is not always the same way it is. There are plenty of books that are about, the young woman who is not socially adept, who becomes super socially adept. And this is the same sort of archetype. Or stories that start off with somebody being perfectly socially adept. I mean, Oscar Wilde's characters are all basically social supermen, right? And we like reading about them because we're like, wow, I wish I could come up with a retort that quickly in the middle of a conversation. I love this character. They still are going to have a growth arc, but their growth arc is not going to be in power level. It's going to be in something else. So that's kind of just one way to look at characters. It's not the only way. but it is one way to view your characters. What about them? Almost every good character, rather than, they may move along this, but almost every good character is going to start off with a little smidge of this and a little smidge of that. And so I will add under the aspire to be kind of the same concept, but they are an expert at something. In other words, they have a superpower. And their superpower may not be something we normally think of. A great example of this is going to be Sam from Lord of the Rings. He is superhumanly loyal, would you not say? He has one attribute. Everything else about him is basically kind of, goofy and befuddled and, the midget in the world of giants. And yet, he has this one super quality that all of us would love to have. And because of that, he's consistently in polls as people's favorite character from Lord of the Rings. In fact, there's a lot of discussion that he probably is the hero of the whole story, is Sam. And that is because Sam has this blend down really well. Yes, he's kind of a fool in a lot of ways, but he has that one thing that is defining about him, and it's something that when you look at him, you say, yeah, I wish I could be Sam for that moment. So, expert at something. The other one I'm going to add up here is that they are proactive. Have we talked about proactivity? Did I do anything about this?
Yeah.
I think I talked about it like the first week or maybe the second. Now, keep in mind that you don't need to do all of these. And there are a few more I'll throw up here. These are all tools in your toolbox that you can use to increase the level of the sympathetic nature of a given character. If you can combine them all, great. In fact, pretty much everything up here are things that you should try to put in almost every character. But it doesn't mean that you can't have one that leaves out one of them or two of them or something like this. These are the ways that we make people sympathetic. A couple of other little ones, they're nice. Nice people are sympathetic. There's an old Hollywood adage. If you want to show us in 30 seconds who the hero and the villain are, have one person pet a puppy and the other person kick that puppy. Okay? We laugh at it, it's very simple, but if you are aware of these sorts of things, you will see people doing essentially that all the time in films. This is how we know they're a bad guy. In fact, they go overboard, they get generic, they get bothersome. I mean, I'm so tired of the opening scene where it's like, villain is doing something, he hires somebody to give him this item or he picks it up and then he kills them. And it's like, okay, well, he's the bad guy. He just killed the person that did him this favor. We know he's the bad guy. But that's the reason they're doing that is it takes them about 30 seconds to tell you who the bad guy is, right? So, show them being nice or, not. Another one is if people like them.